Hello, FB friends. This is Pastor Bob again, and we're going to do part 2 on God.gov. And we've been in part 1, we're talking about God setting up all the authorities in Romans chapter 13. And in 13, back in, I got a little devotional I kind of want to read along with on part 2 here. And it starts off with Romans 13:1. Every person is to be subject to the governing authorities. For there is no authority except from God, and those which are established by God. Back in, we read in the Word where cops and policemen, anyone in authority was called by God to do that, to keep peace. I have a little devotional, I think, come out of First Baptist out of Dallas, and I just kind of read along. It kind of takes a little bit different angle at it. It says, as Christians, we are to try to delay premier collapse of our government and our country, and that so we can preach the gospel. So we're keeping this peace, and so we want to delay it just so we can share the word and preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. Well, how do we push back against the evil that is out there in this world today? One way that you can do it is through electing officials. You want Christian people in there that believe how you believe. And we have an opportunity in America to elect people. We get to elect our authorities. So what kind of authorities do you want? You want good moral people in there. You find out who they are and you elect them. So we get to elect our own authority over us. So what kind of authority do you want? We live in Braden, Florida. Do you want over Manatee County in Braden? What kind of authority do you have? It says here, in one way that we can do this in our country is through government officials that we elect. Some people say Christians should not be involved in politics, but God is the one who designed the government. And the government is God's idea. Did you know what the Bible has to say? He says there are 3 institutions that God created. Number 1 is Genesis chapter 2. God created man and woman. So we start with a family, and number 1. And number 2, God, and number 2 is in Genesis 9, 10, and 11. God created the government. He started the government in Genesis chapter 9. Noah, flood, Abraham started the government, elders, and so forth. So God set up a church government. And then the third government that God created is the church. There's governing officials in the church. The first church started in Acts chapter 2. Apostle, prophet, there's put authority in the church. So there's 3 different authorities that God set up. So number 1 was Adam and Eve. Number 2 was for Abraham and his whole family and his elders, stuff like that. And number 2 is the church, who is Jesus Christ. So the governing is just ordained by God, is as the church is. Now that's where, you go to ordained church? God, yes. Well, God also ordained the government. So the government just ordained by God as a church, because both were created by God to serve a purpose. Okay? First purpose, the government was not called to share the gospel. It was called to have peace, create peace. So the government is not called to share the gospel, but is called to be the restrainer of evil. So the government is to keep peace. Okay? So then God designed the government to keep order, morality in society. And Paul described God's purpose in the government in Romans 13, 4 and 3. Rulers are not to cause of fear, but for good behavior. For not fear for good behavior, but we're to fear evil. So, do you want a kind of government? Do you have one? Do you want one with no fear of authority? Or do you want an authority that you can fear? So, it says, do what is good and you will have praise from the same. For it is a matter of God for you is for good. So, if you do what is evil, you better be afraid. But if you do what is good, there's going to be peace. So, we have to be careful as we live out there. So we really 2 ministries. There's one that God ordained through the government, and we have the ministries of God today. So that's just a little bit different angle. And I just want to close up with this. It says, for the rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. So do you want to have a no fear authority, or do you want what is good for you and have praise from the one above? So get out and vote today. It's almost election time. Which leader would be the best for you to be over the authority of the government in the United States? So God bless you. Have a good day.